That's my microphone, sorry. And that's Carlos's. Welcome, everybody. We'd like to welcome you to the third concert in our nienteForte virtual season 11. Thanks to all of you who are joining us. We have some very exciting music to share with you today, including two world premiere works from Carli and Maxwell Dulaney. And we'll be having a chat after the concert where Max will pop his head in and talk about the piece that he wrote that is closing out this concert. I encourage all of you to engage with us and ask questions in the chat. Also, if you can't hear either me or any of the music or Carlos, then throw that in the chat as well. Like the previous two concerts, we had some initial technical difficulties and I had to do some quick reconfiguring to make sure that I could get everybody heard. So engage with us in the chat. Make sure that you can hear us. If you have any questions, then please please feel free to reach out. We have somebody here, Mendel Lee. I can't pronounce that because I don't even want to accidentally mispronounce it. We have a couple of people that are already in the chat that are watching and listening. Thank you for joining with us. If you have questions, feel free to ask them. I'll be monitoring the chat, and we'll be dealing with those questions and answering them at the very end of the concert with either Carlos or with Max or with myself. So if you have any questions for any of us, then feel free to throw it our way. Before we begin, I also want to give a shout out to our sponsors. The National Performance Network, the Jazz and Heritage Foundation, the Tulane University School of Liberal Arts, and the Tulane University Newcomb Department of Music have all been sponsors of Season 11. I also want to thank our donors, supporters, and fans. I feel like the arts profession has been and continues to be impacted pretty heavily by the COVID-19 pandemic, and the direct support that the nienteForte community has given performers and composers, both in our community and across the globe, has been very impactful in allowing them to continue doing the work that they love. We'd love for all of you to join our community and our mission to champion contemporary music in New Orleans. So please like and subscribe and support our stuff. Spread the love of all the stuff that we post on our social media. And if you'd like to do a direct donation, then please go to nienteForte.com/donate. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Carlos Cordeiro. He's not the former president of the United States Soccer Federation that resigned in conflict because of treatment of the U.S. women's soccer team. He is a clarinetist that has a master's degree in orchestral performance from Rice University and contemporary performance from the Manhattan School of Music. He's enjoyed a prolific performance career performing with numerous new music ensembles, including Load Bang and Talk Ensemble. He's performed across the globe, particularly in Europe and Asia, along with North America. He's currently based in Portugal, so thanks for staying up super late with us, Carlos. I appreciate you being a part of this and all your work that you've done to be a part of our season this year.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. If you could talk a little bit about what drew you specifically to contemporary music as a clarinetist. Like, did you start that love like at the beginning of your professional career or as you were in school, or did you kind of learn about it as you went through your undergrad or before that, or what?
Definitely not at the beginning. I was pretty much a very classical player. When I went to undergrad in Portugal, we had a plan of repertoire that we had to follow. In your first year of undergrad, you would play these pieces, and then you would follow with these etudes, and then into these pieces. I guess it really started when I started working with composers at school. Ângela, one of the composers of tonight, was actually one of the people that I interacted with very early on, but it never really caught on until probably the first year of my master's. I always played new stuff because I was very attracted to the weird sounds, and I liked that it kind of annoyed people sometimes. But yeah, like a lot of people that play contemporary music, what attracted me to it was the chance of collaborating with living composers, of working with someone, of developing a relationship and a work that represents your relationship with that composer. And I make an effort to play music by people that I know. It's very, very rare for me to plan something on my solo recitals that is not someone that I either am in contact with or that I've worked with. Just because I think it gives a whole new um, dimension to the music that you may or may not be aware of, but I am, and that means a lot to me. So, yeah,
Yeah, no,
that would
absolutely.
be.
I think it's a very common theme in the conversations that I've had in both these talks and also like kind of with other performers and composers that the collaborative process of new music is something that is very important to us and something that people on the outside of new music don't necessarily know that much about, right? Because especially even other classical orchestral performers or band performers that are just used to just reading music on a page by some dead composer or something from a couple of centuries ago, like they see themselves as being just a conduit for the vision of the composer or the vision of the conductor, right? But not really understanding that with living composers, that the music really belongs to, especially if it's written specifically for you as a performer,
Right,
that
right, right.
it's really something that belongs to not just the composer, but really to you. And that sort of collaboration is something that's very appealing about working with living artists.
Yeah, and it's very rewarding too because in the end you earn hopefully a friendship or not depending on the piece and how much the composer makes you go through, I guess. But but it's a process that then allows you to be better with the other work that you do, including dealing with students and other composers, and it's very instructive and constructive, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we'll get into this a little bit with Max with his specific piece, but the other thing that I know that you've talked about a little bit, even in just the brief interactions that we've had, is just how much new music can continue to challenge you and kind of make you learn new things even about the instruments that you already have. And I think there's something that's really nice about that too, that you don't feel yourself kind of caught in a very static place as it relates to you learning the instrument or you learning more about the music that's just kind of there.
Yeah, no, I mean, we are raised, let's we are raised as musicians with a very standard technique, right? Like everyone has a pretty standard technique when they begin. And for example, learning things like I don't know, Timothy McCormack's Raw for bass clarinet,
Mm.
where the whole like the score, for example, is a tablature where it's about the action, like you don't see the sound, you see the action, stuff like that. And yeah, learning all the sounds and um, all the things that you will see in Max's piece, for example. It's a very challenging process, but at the same time very rewarding because when you learn to control the instrument to a point where you can do those things accurately and repeatedly, you also gain a much larger control on the basic technique of the instrument. So it's never a one way journey. You always gain something um, both ways. There were times where I was learning new techniques that allowed me to know why some of my students could not make let's just call it a normal sound
Mm.
because they were
Sure.
doing something with somewhere in their system that would create the kind of sound that I was trying to create. Or so, there were also times that I learned from them. I wanted to create that kind of sound and try to figure out what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah, no, absolutely. That sort of conversational sort of thing relating to all aspects of it, the creative aspects of it, the technical aspects of that. There's something that's very exciting and very present about it, and I think about that kind of stuff all the time. Being that you are somebody who's in Portugal now and also from Portugal and has had like some international experience with contemporary music, can you give some perspective? Because I don't know a whole lot about it. Like I hear about it, but I don't really know a whole lot about the difference in approach by audiences or in the culture of new music in North America versus Portugal versus Europe versus Asia. Can you give me a little bit of an international perspective on how new music is generally received in the various places that you've been to?
yeah. I mean, I have to preface this with I've been out of Portugal for about 10 years, so my experience in that is limited to what I hear from other people since I left, of course.
Mm.
And my experience in other countries has been mostly within contemporary music festivals.
Sure.
So
So you have kind of a
I
limited
might,
lens on
yeah,
what you're kind
yeah,
of used to. Yeah.
yeah. But I can tell you that, for example, I was very surprised when Load Bank played in Nanning, in China, and we had a full auditorium of people just, listening to us play really, really out there music. When before they were hearing to they were hearing some neoclassic piece or something like that, and they were as excited. So that was a very cool experience. In Portugal, my experience was always that it was something that was done, and it was like kind of cool, but your it was never like an actual thing.
Hmm.
I think and hope that things have changed, but I think it's still very underrepresented. Um, but then again, like I said, I've been out of the country for about 10 years, and my experience is limited because when I go to other countries, I usually look for the look for the same people
Okay, you go
that like
straight
the
for
same
your
thing.
comfort
Yeah,
zone and
yeah,
no,
like when I go to Germany, you go to Darmstadt or Berlin or something like that. So my view is a little skewed on that.
sure.
So
Yeah,
I'm
no, I
sorry.
understand that. No, that's fine. That's any perspective, whether it's expert or not. Like it's always good to kind of see how the individuals see that stuff as they kind of travel around and understand that. And I know that my experience with new music is all U.S. based because I don't do a whole lot of international travel. But even within the U.S., it's definitely something very different if if you're going to a small kind of concert. Like in my undergraduate, I would go to a few new music concerts that were just kind of from like contemporary ensembles, but ones that were very local, so they don't necessarily get like a whole lot of draw. But
Hmm.
then when I was out in Portland or out in Oregon for my master's, there was a concert of that Steve Reich showed up to and was like the kind of like the featured composer, and he was there and he performed with his baseball hat and as a part of music for 18 musicians, and that was to a full crowd that that gave a standing ovation after the piece was done. So
Right.
everything is always within a spectrum, and it's always nice.
Yeah.
Even and you have to gain an appreciation for both the small audiences that are really gung ho and seek you out and are fans of you,
Yes,
but
for
also
sure.
kind of the larger stuff as well. Like that's something very magical about that kind of spectrum and that kind of intimacy that can be drawn from that.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the program that we're going to be listening to and talking about, like in big picture. Like what I know that some of these pieces were written for you because of Max and also Max's student Carli. But tell me a little bit more about what you think about the overall program and thematic ideas, and about Mick Spencer's piece and also with Angela's piece a little bit.
So the thematic idea is it kind of showed up after I chose the program. Um, it's kind of a deconstruction, if you will, of the clarinet clarinetism, um, because you know we're gonna start with Mick Spencer's piece, and he uses the clarinet in a really kind of funky, whimsical way that I don't know. It kind of reminds me of a building without foundation in a good way.
Hmm.
Kind of like this very sturdy thing that kind of like just lives in and out of of being. But Mick mostly uses he uses the the contemporary sorry, the word is escaping me,
No worries.
um, language. Sorry, English second language. Sometimes it's just my brain just blocks.
It's all good.
Here's the contemporary language, and but at the same time, it's so organic for the clarinet. It everything kind of just sits there, like everything feels good. So that piece for me kind of represents like the clarinet, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
then Angela's piece, Angela, sorry, I was saying her name in English. I shouldn't do that. And like I said, Angela went to school with me. We met in undergrad, and I've always been a great fan of her music, and I play it whenever I can. Um, and we get another side of the clarinet and the electronics. Then with Carli's piece, we kind of take the clarinet apart a little bit and get into this multiphonic world. Um, and with Max's piece, we kind of just throw the clarinet out the window. And no, that's not what happens. But we kind of put the clarinet under a microscope and we examine all these tiny little things that happen within the clarinet itself. Um, uh, the the whole piece is to me, he will correct me if I'm wrong, but it's an exploration of like this inside state of mind. I don't know how better to put it, but it's a very introspective and at the same time furious kind of piece.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I did a good job explaining the.
No, absolutely. I think
there was not really a theme per se. It was just a collection of pieces that I thought fitted together and made sense to me as a journey.
no, absolutely. And that journey, I think, as you say, like it starts off with something that is contemporary, but something that's still very, like, I don't want to say traditional exactly, but just as you say, just about the clarinet and just kind of traveling through, like adding
That's
other
the great
elements.
thing about the piece is that it's not traditional at all, but it's so well written that it feels like I'm just playing like just major scales up and down.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And then as you go through it, both as a I feel I mean I can't speak for you as the performer, but I feel that as the performer and also for me as a listener and hopefully for our audience, you get to kind of see just how far we can really stretch out what the clarinet does, like what the clarinet does with the electronics, and then what the clarinet does with the multiphonics, and then all that kind of culminates into what Max has really brought in his piece. So yeah, I think it's going to be a very it's definitely a concert that, even if accidentally, was kind of turned into this thing that creates a really nice overall arc and thesis for clarinet, which I think is pretty exciting. I'm very looking forward to having people hear this works, having our audience hear these works, and give the opportunity to be able to talk about it. So,
Thank you.
yeah, very good, absolutely. So we're going to take a quick, well, not quick exactly. It'll be like a 12-minute break-ish or so. Again, if you have any questions to ask of either Carlos, me, or to Max, who's going to join us for the post Q&A, then please feel free to pop a question into the chat. And we'll see you back here at 7 o'clock to talk briefly about the pieces, listen to them, and then get into our post-concert discussion. Thanks, everybody. See you back here in just a moment. And we are back. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, I'm here with Carlos Cordeiro for nienteForte's third virtual concert of our 11th season. For the concert, we're going to be presenting 4 works that Carlos pre-recorded for us, and we'll be doing some brief discussion to introduce each piece. After the concert is over, we'll be having a post-concert discussion, which will include nienteForte's very own Max Dulaney, whose piece is going to be world premiered and is the last piece on this concert. In addition to a discussion with him, we are going to have a Q&A. I did see that there are a couple of people that have already put, or a couple of questions rather, that's already been put into the chat. If you have other questions or other things that you want to say, or if you just even want to give some love for the composers and also for Carlos for the work that they did on the pieces, the more that you engage with us, the more love that we feel. So please, engage with us, be in the chat, ask questions. We love to be able to do discussions, and that's worked really well for us in these concerts to this point. Let's see if there's anything else I needed to throw in there. I don't think so. So let's go straight into it then. Talk about this first piece for me a little bit, Carlos.
So, Ungrund after Bohme. This is piece 2. It's from a series. 3B, for example, is for clarinet and optional cello. These pieces are by Mick Spencer. Mick is is it the head of composition? And he has like 1,000 more jobs at Leeds University of Leeds. I met Mick when I should say Dr. Spencer, I'm sorry. I met Dr. Spencer when I went to Leeds with Load Bang. And like I said in the beginning, like a really big thing for me is to be able to play music by people that I know. And he is such a warm, great person. And to top it off, his music is amazing. So, of course, I've been trying to play this piece publicly for a while now, and finally it came to fruition. I don't know if there's a lot that I want to say about it, but Bohme, the German philosopher, and I don't know. I think let's hear it.
Yeah, this sounds good to me. So this is Mick Spencer's work right here. Let me hit the thing. All right, we are back. Thanks so much for that. And I see that in the middle of that, Mick is actually in the chat right now and being a part of this concert. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Mick. And if you could, give some love to Mick as well for his wonderful piece. And also thanks, Carlos, for that great performance of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so why don't we move on? Let's go on to the next piece that's on the concert here, which is the piece by Ângela. Is there something you want to talk? Anything you want to talk about there?
Yeah, so Ângela, like I said before, we went to school together. She was one of the first composers that I collaborated with, not in a solo piece or anything of the sort, just as a fellow student. I'm sure we played some of her ensemble works and stuff like that, but she was definitely one of the people that started that feeling that I want to do contemporary music eventually. About the piece, so this piece was originally for bassoon. She did a whole transcription for bass clarinet. Originally was for Professor Hugh Kessman. He was one of the big supporters of contemporary music at our old school, and this piece is actually recorded by a friend of mine, Frederic Cordoz. He recorded in his latest CD. But the piece Reflex 2 is for bass clarinet and electronics, and there's this whole game between the clarinet and the electronics where the electronic kind of mimics and interrupts the clarinet, and there's a whole dialogue. It's a pretty interesting piece. I obviously like it. The one thing that really stands out to me is how well she matches and involves electronics with the clarinet. So like the final product of the clarinet plus the electronics is such a good what's the word, juxtaposition.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think that's all I want to say about it.
Okay, very good. Sweet. Let's give this thing a listen. And we are back. Sweet. Thanks so much. I don't think that Ângela is on here, or I haven't at least seen her in the chat. But I just wanted to say that as I was kind of reviewing all this material, I really fell in love with that piece, and I hope that everybody that listened to that also really liked it. It's very like what Carlos said, the juxtaposition of the electronics with the clarinet and just the overall shape of the piece is very compelling, and I really appreciate it. So thanks to Ângela, and again, thanks to Carlos for your work in making that whole thing what
Yeah,
it
of
was
course.
as a piece of music.
You should check out some more of her music. She also writes for Portuguese instruments, and it's really interesting music.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Sweet. So let's move on from this and let's talk a little bit about Carli. For those that don't know, Carli is one of Max's students here at Tulane University, one of his comp students at Tulane University. So talk a little bit about this piece and introduce us to this.
So Carly and I started collaborating, I think about 5 months ago, something like that, where she came with some ideas for the piece, like some drafts, and then we had a couple of Zoom meetings where we worked out some of the ideas, some of the sounds, some of the things that she wanted to do, and but you know, like the core idea of the piece was always there, which is the start. The opening of the piece is this series of multiphonics, like this phrase of spectral multiphonics, and then she kind of takes that and distends it. The name of the piece is Distending, so she distends it all over the piece, and the sonic choices that she made with multiphonics, and not just with the pitch of the multiphonics, but also the way they sound on the clarinet. You know, it's not an acoustical perfect instrument, so some notes, some multiphonics will sound a little more muffled, a little more bright, and I think it's really interesting the way she played with that. And then with the video, I tried to kind of take the idea and the form that she chose and put that into a video format. The reason why I did that is because, well, Carly worked with me, we collaborated together, so I felt that I could also try to bring something to the table besides my performance.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think that's it. And if Carly wants to say something on the chat or something, we'll listen.
I don't know if that Carli is actually on the chat. Oh, no, there she is. Oh, I don't know, Carli. If you want to say anything else, or if you missed anything, then feel free to say something about it, and we'll make sure that we give you a shout out at the very end. I will say I have a warning up on this too, but there are some flickering lights in what Carlos did at the end of this video. So if that's a problem for you as a viewer, then please be aware of that. It doesn't happen until towards the end of the video, but be aware that there are flickering lights in that. So if there are issues with that, then maybe just listen to it and don't actually watch it. Let's check this piece out. And we are back. Carli is in the chat and checking this thing out. So if you could give some warm love to Carli and for her piece, again to Carlos for his performance of that piece. Carli, hope you're happy with the way that that turned out. It's a very wonderful piece, and we appreciate your contribution to this concert.
Thank you, Carli.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to get into the last piece of the concert here. I'm going to let Carlos talk about it a little bit, but before we do that, I just want to give a little bit of background and warning that this piece is pretty long. It's about 30 minutes long once we actually get this whole thing started. So it's I think, and we'll talk a little bit more with Max after, but I can say from the start that to me, the 30 minutes goes by. It doesn't seem like 30 minutes at all because you get really immersed in what Max has done with this work. And so I encourage you to really absorb yourself. Like, even, I mean, I'll let Carlos talk a little bit about maybe about the video production itself, but it really lends itself to being really immersed in it. Immediately after that 30 minutes, we're just going to jump right into Max joining the call and go into our post-concert discussion. Again, I encourage you, if you have any questions at all about any of the works that are on this concert, because clearly we've seen Mick and also Carli in here. So if you've got questions for them, then feel free to at them directly and ask them questions about their music. If you've got questions for Carlos or for Max or for me for the post-concert discussion, then please feel free to put them into the chat, and I will grab all those and we'll talk about all that stuff once this piece is actually over. So before we get into this, though, again, thanks for everybody that's come and been on this journey with us so far. Carlos, talk a little bit about what we're going to be getting into here with Max's piece.
Okay, so I mean, we'll get into how the piece came to be and all of that after. I guess before, what I want to say is, it's a piece that has a very big range of dynamics. So there are going to be times where it's very quiet, and it's a I like to say it's a very introspective, internal, but also explosive piece. So it's kind of like an implosion kind of thing. Do not adjust the screen; it is that dark. It is dark on purpose. When I was deciding what to do for the videos for this concert, I thought of the video as a component of the piece and not as just a way for you to see me do what I'm doing. So everything that you've seen until now and Max's piece is done to complement the piece, or in an effort to complement the piece. Yeah, this is why Max's piece is so dim, and yeah, we'll get into it after.
Yeah, for sure. So thanks again. Hope that you stick around after the piece is done for the post-concert discussion. Here is Max's work. Enjoy. All right, welcome back. Joining us for this post-concert discussion and also Q&A, I want to introduce to the chat Mr. Maxwell Dulaney at the bottom here. He's the one. This was a world premiere. I should have said this before, and I apologize. This is a world premiere of this work that Max wrote for Carlos, which is and it was written specifically for Carlos, and it was definitely a bear of a piece, but something that, as I said, I feel like you just get yourself lost and immersed a little bit in it. I want to give Carlos and Max an opportunity to talk a little bit about the piece and about the history of it, the history of their collaboration. So I don't know, Carlos, you had some good stuff. I think I'll let you start because you've got the good speaking about the first story here.
All right. So I met Max in Boston after an Etche Ensemble concert at a bar. And after a couple of beers, I kind of like...
It was some bougie Cambridge bar.
Fine.
Interesting.
Or that. But the point is, after a couple of beers, I was like, hey man, I really like your music. Would you write a piece for me? And Max said yes. And I honestly thought, well, it just said yes because it's kind of awkward to say no right now. So we'll see what comes out of this. And but actually, should I say? But a few months later, we started working on the piece. Max came.
No, actually, it was like a week later.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My ass doesn't get up to the Northeast very often, so I think we met.
Oh, right. And we're just meeting to see what the contrabass could do or some stuff like that.
I don't even think we knew it was going to be contrabass at first, though. I think we were just exploring everything. Sorry, but yeah, keep going.
No, that's this is pretty much our collaboration. It's like us correcting each other. But yeah, I mean, it started like that, and I feel very lucky that Max wrote this piece. So after that first phase of like kind of figure out where it was going to be or what it's going to be and how it's going to go, Max went and worked, and then Max, you came back to New York with like a draft.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then after that, we kind of worked on that, and I premiered the first study for the piece. I don't remember if it was at Longy or somewhere else. I think it was at Longy.
You were here. It was.
No, it was in at Tulane.
And then
can I tell the story about that premiere? I can.
Sure.
You mean when I said the wrong instrument story?
No. The timing of giving me the final score.
Oh yeah, you can tell.
So I was at Tulane for a few days, and we worked on the piece, and I mean I was very familiar with the contents of the score and whatnot, but I received the final score 6 minutes, a whole 6 minutes before the concert.
Right.
I mean, no harm was done because I knew the material that was there, which I just thought was funny.
I think I even texted you like, oh, don't forget.
Yeah.
Really quiet.
Yeah. And then after that, I think it was. I think after that was Longy, and then after that was Darmstadt. So there was like a phase of like studies to the piece, and then after those, Max kind of took a little time, and one day I received a glorious 14 pages of music, which you know, it's been, how long has it been? Like 2.5 years since we started, something like that.
I mean, since we met at that bar, it's been 3.5 years.
3.5 years. Okay, let's say 3 years of like working on the piece.
Yeah.
from my point of view, it's been like an incredible journey. Just because I gave Max a complete like do whatever you want to do, just write whatever you want to write, and I'll try to deal with it. So the studies were pretty self-contained. They were just like they, they had the sound world of the piece, but it was all stuff that I could do until this final version, where I I was talking to Mendel the other day. Like I was going through my notes. I have spent about between 110 and 120 hours on this piece, just to be able to get my technique on contrabass clarinet to a point where I can, do those slap runs, the slap tongue runs, or play those six altissimo E's at the end, or just the range. I think that the usable range of the piece is about 5.5 to 6 octaves of usable range, meaning that notes that I have to repeat repeatedly and out of nowhere. Um, it's been, it's been really interesting and very challenging, and I've definitely learned so much from it. Um, I remember the day that I recorded this video, which was last Saturday, I think. I texted Max and I was like, "Yo, I've cried, I've laughed, I've recorded your piece, I'm done." It's really been an amazing journey. I mean, to me as a clarinetist, I've learned so much about what my limits are and how to try and break those limits. But then again, that's why I am so passionate about collaboration and actually working with people that foster that kind of work, and that make you. I mean, Max literally made me push my boundaries to a point where I never told him stuff was impossible, but in my mind I was just like, how am I gonna do this?
Mm-hmm.
From I don't know, from the beginning of the piece, for example, where nothing, my fingers don't move. Everything that is happening is inside my mouth. Everything is, which I think is beautiful. Like you think of the name of the piece, the snow understands the orchard as it buries it. And it gives you this image of like intimacy and closeness, and everything that is happening happens inside of the contrabass. Anyway, I'm gonna stop rambling and let Max.
No, you're good. You're
something.
good. So I guess we can direct this a little bit from Max for the piece. Like, can you talk a little bit about the conception and the creation and the discoveries and everything that went around the creation of this work?
Yeah. Let's see. Let's see how many ums I can throw in there. It started. The piece started even before, as like a little sketch I did for myself. I wrote myself a little sketch on B flat clarinet as I was just playing, and I was just finding some alt fingerings and microtonal fingerings and working on some stuff for a different piece. And I was, as I often find myself, musically and compositionally stuck. So I just wrote myself a little thing, and that's that melody. That's the sort of framework of the piece. That it's only transposed by octave mostly. I mean, like, you could say that it comes around. I don't want to get into it, but essentially, I don't develop it. I mean, I play it. It's written, and Carlos performs it in the different ranges of the contrabass.
Sure.
And that kind of is one of the structural underpinnings. I hate getting into that kind of stuff, but it was just this one little melody. That one little melody that you hear is really where everything sort of came from. And so I had that in my mind, I think, even when I first met Carlos, and he asked me. So, like, when his story is like, he asks me and he's all like embarrassed or something, and I'm sitting here shocked that Carlos would want to play my music. Because he's just, and I had just heard him play, and this was the first time I had heard him play live, and I was just like, I mean, this guy rips, man. Anyway, so it was funny because he said that, and I remember going, no, I thought you were the. We kind of had a laugh about that whole thing, but getting a little off topic. That's really where the piece started, and then it just started growing out of our collaboration and finding things that he was into, and I could, just having conversations with Carlos, just like you get to have with any performer, and you might be talking about one thing, and then that person starts doing something they're really into, like, oh, check this out, and then that sort of spurs a whole nother sort of tangential conversation, and hopefully you've got the recorder on, and you're listening, and then I went back and I transcribed a few things, got back with Carlos about how exactly he was doing things and how much of this should be notated or shouldn't be notated, those types of things, and we explored a lot, and I couldn't have done the piece without Carlos, because you just don't get to write a piece like that without that kind of time investment that he's willing to do, and it's just an honor. I'm not really answering the question. I got a little off.
No, you're good. It does help to hone in a little bit on what I've said through all of these conversations, not just with Carlos, but also with Megan and with Roberta, about the nature of new music and music of living composers, and the collaborative nature of it, and how much that collaborative nature is so important, and how much it helps to make the music something that is really owned by not just the composer, that the performer is just translating for them, but it is really about the piece of music really being owned by both of you, that he helped to try to it's not even just that he helped you to realize your vision, but some of his own vision also got into the piece, and I think that's a very important part of that there's credit to something really magical about having a work or a collaborative kind of effort that allows for that in music, when so many of the more traditional music performers don't really get to have that relationship with the music of composers that aren't living anymore, and that's something that to me is very unique, and something that I constantly celebrate in our field.
Yeah, and the great thing is that Carlos kind of, he put the fire under my ass to get something done, like in certain important moments, right? Mm-hmm. So having that relationship, and then not being ready, but then just well, let's just do a version and call it a study. Well, that sounds, why not? I've never really approached music like that. That freed up another bit of writer's block. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And all of that first study is in that piece. Yeah. It's just, what was maybe, I think 8 minutes, 6 minutes, not even 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Six music.
About 6 minutes.
It got bigger and bigger, and then it did sit for a while, and then there, personally, I finished it last year, after, with COVID and the pandemic and the lockdown, but also after my mom dying, I just had no way of doing anything or wanting to do anything. And
sure.
So that summer, I finally just made myself write, and knowing I had Carlos to sort of lean on was really emotionally there. It tied a lot of those things. So I think I often talk about catharsis and completion of music, because I think that completing a piece, you've then sort of, opened yourself up to a whole bunch of, you just exposed yourself in a very raw way, which I think is really healthy in the end, but can feel very terrifying. But it's a lot less terrifying when you have someone so amazing to depend on, you know what I mean? And this piece also interestingly got, while I'm on it, just so I make sure I get it out there, because pieces get wrapped up in your sort of subconscious level of art when you're working on lots of things. And I was working on a one-act opera at the time, trying to focus on Eurydice, and I had been reading some Rilke, and then ran into Joanna Klink. She did a companion poem for Rilke's Orpheus, Eurydice, and Hermes, and then she did her own version. It's a great book, by the way. Joanna Klink's a great poet. Ends up one of my great friends who ended up working with me on the libretto for that one-act opera, studied with her, and so there was just like all these beautiful connections. But the line was in my head from reading this poem over and over, and that line for the title is a line out of here, and it has all of what we were talking about, what Carlos was talking about, that sort of internal world of the contrabass clarinet being the existence of the piece. It's got that kind of feel in that poem, because it's about Eurydice struggling with who she is in a very sort of interesting way in hell, and being led out of hell, but not really wanting to go and not understanding the rationale behind it. So even those kind of things kind of filtered into this piece, and which is really, I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out there, I guess, because I guess it seemed pertinent.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. and I guess it's also something really, as you say, like there's a lot of ambition around a piece like this, and it's definitely something that if you're going to put so much of your craft and so much of your heart into something like this, then you have to have such a degree of trust and reliability on the person or the people that you're collaborating with to have that journey with you. And the opposite is true too, because it's definitely a journey also and a project for Carlos on his side as a performer. So to be able to have that sort of relationship and to have it then create a work that has that is ambitious, but also, in my opinion, succeeds in the ambition, I think is really quite remarkable, and it shows in both the craft of the work and also the way that Carlos performs it, and it's really quite something.
Well, that means a lot. I mean, I really appreciate that. I'm always extremely self-critical, so I don't know. I'm extremely happy with the work, but there's always that like. Did I really write a 30-minute piece?
Of course. No, I get that. Absolutely.
Part of the reasons it's 30 minutes long is because I just had, it gets tied into what the last year has been like for all of us.
Sure.
It was, it could have been shorter, but when I think about it, it couldn't have been. So.
Absolutely. Like it needs to serve the piece, and if the piece needs to be 30 minutes, then it just needs to be 30 minutes, and that you have to own that if you're going to lean into that, if that's what the piece dictates. And
the other thing is that I've learned, and it's great when you don't feel the time constraint of finishing a piece. Like Carlos and I might not have spoken for like 4 or 5 months about it, but then I could be like, hey, here's some. Could you check, out, and then like we're all like right back in it, you know what I mean? Or
yeah, absolutely.
He's not able, and I'm happy to wait a while, or whatever your life, it's like, it's all about service for the music and not so much like getting it done and getting it out there so quickly.
Yeah, hitting some sort of artificial deadline.
Right.
Yeah, and there was also. I mean, I feel I have to say this. There was also always a great deal of respect and trust between us.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, like, I could tell Max that I can do this, but this is gonna make me hurt really bad, or like these fingerings are gonna they're gonna destroy my hands, and he will revise something, or Max would be like, I don't really like this, and I would try to play another way. It was like, it was very open. It was a very open communication, and like you said, we would go for periods of time that we would not communicate at all, but all of a sudden we were just like, we just made up for the past 4 months in like 2 weeks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome. think we're going to kind of wrap this up there, but I do want to make sure that I get into the couple of questions that did get thrown into the chat here. We didn't get a whole lot in the second half, but there was some stuff at the very beginning. I forget. I don't actually have written down exactly who asked it. Oh, like Emma Softon, some of that copy pasted incorrectly. But somebody, sorry. So Sefton Smith asked Carlos, you said that you enjoy playing pieces on which you've collaborated with a composer. How do you feel about playing pieces that were composed in collaboration with somebody else?
I mean, that's all good. I enjoy the process of collaboration and the process of someone writing with me, but you know, in the end, if it is a piece that I will enjoy playing, a piece that is well written, I will totally be down for it, and will also be down to, like, if asked, to give my input on that. You know, how does it work? How does it fit into someone that does not have the same technique, the same background, the same ideas about sound or articulation or anything like that? One of the interesting things that I'm looking forward to see is how other people will look at this piece, because you know there are things that Max did not need to notate. Mm-hmm. There are things that I just know that, like, oh, this is what he meant. Which actually, I think it ties with the other question that we had, right? That was...
what are your feelings on the future of pieces that you have collaborated on?
Exactly. So, you know, that's a very interesting question, because, you know, we have to think about the longevity of the pieces, and it ties into with, you know, the ethics of performance practice, and we can talk about it for days, but...
Well, it sounds like you're doing your PhD on that topic. I don't know that.
I am looking for funding to do my PhD on that topic. Yes, that is true. Yes, that is actually true.
I'm getting letter requests.
Yeah, you did get a couple of letter requests. But basically, what I think about it is that it comes down to you know, not wanting to make this too simple. It comes down to the ethics of performance, and I believe that it's a balance between notation, communication, and responsibility. So I think that if someone wants to play this piece, me and Max are extremely reachable. You know, so if you want to play this piece, you can ask Max. Sorry, ESL moment just hitting me right now. You can ask Max to play this piece. You can ask me what the notation means. There's the whole chain of communication that you can initiate and can make this piece possible. It is interesting to think what it can be, like, you know, if someone just like gets the score and decides to play it.
Yeah, I think a chunk of that, I mean, for this piece, for example, then it's, you know, some people spend a lot more time trying to make it readily available from the outset to any player. I don't think that, I mean, I would have to take time, and right. the translator performer, you know, sort of evangelist of the piece,
right,
would have to also devote time to sort of teaching some of the stuff, not because it's like I used a bunch of not too many weird techniques, but, like, you know, the way the score's set up, I didn't want to put all the fingerings in for the multiphonics, because he knew them, and like it made the score messy, and, you know, it would have made the score 25 pages because of all the spacing. It was like, those were pragmatic issues. And then for me, like, I know all the multiphonics work. We worked through them. I have all the multiphonic fingerings, but Jesus, finding them in my notes right now, I mean,
but I mean,
that's another problem. I don't know that I'm ready for someone else to play it yet. You know?
Sure.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I am not ready for someone else to play it.
I don't.
Yeah.
I think this is Carlos's for a while. But who's willing to play a 30-minute piece?
Well, but I think it's also a little bit like this piece in particular. I think is very specific to that, right? Like it's and there's a spectrum of that sort of thing where not all new. I mean, clearly, not all new music is written with a specific performer in mind exactly, and there is like for especially for I remember one of the pieces on Megan's concert that Arthur Brewer had come in to the chat and said something about how joyous it is to hear his work interpreted by somebody else in a way that he didn't even necessarily conceive in his composition. And I think for certain kinds of pieces, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's not one size fit all, right? Like there's certain kinds of pieces where I wrote it out there and I want the performer to just own it and to do whatever they want with it, and I love being surprised by the approach that performer might take to that piece. But there's also a piece like this where it's not even just about the fact that you have a singular idea of it, but the collaborative effort of it and the kind of the intimacy, therefore, of that piece really belonging to the two of you means that there has to be some degree of respect, like kind of like what Carlos is saying, like the ethics of not taking a piece like this lightly or irresponsibly in order to achieve what you want to for the two of you as the collaborators on the piece.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, just to finish my answer to I ultimately I don't have an answer, but I do think that it is a very interesting problem to pose, because there have been a lot of people, Frank Cox, Tanja Ornig, Ian Pace, all those people that have thought and written about performance practice and all of that, but I believe that there's there's the little corner of the ethics and how all these communication chains work and all of that will be really interesting to explore, which is why I'm trying to get some research on that. But I think it's a very interesting question, and I'm sorry that I don't have a very direct answer, but I just have more questions for you.
Could I chime in just a little bit?
Yeah, please.
Because I think what it was M who asked this?
Yes, correct.
But, hello, M. I don't know you. Glad to meet you. It's also a question of, like, as a composer now, who we're often writing for, like, tons of composers write person, as Ken Wayno calls, person specific pieces,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like, and he has, and Ken has his own way of approaching that, in his very, very intense and great, beautiful way. And then others of us also, we're all working in a similar space. We get to work with one person and we're really indebted to that person, and we want to make it work for that person. What happens when another person plays it, right? And so there is, maybe, other composers throughout history, they've all worked in the same frame, right? I mean, most composers were writing for a select group of performers who they were friends with, or had the vocal group in the church, and then they worked on the secular music too on the side, and then it gets translated on, and I think a little bit might be lost, but something might be gained in the future too. Like, obviously things are gained in the future, and so there is something interesting about eventually relinquishing that sort of, it's not ours anymore at a certain point. At a certain point, it's
Absolutely.
everyone. And will that person, without talking to me or Carlos, play my piece, or Ângela's piece, or Mike's piece? I mean, there's a lot going on in Mike's piece, for example, with all the mnemonic stuff with the double bass and the repetition, like getting it all just right and getting all the articulation and the gesture. It takes talking with the composer. It probably takes talking with someone who's played it before. And I wonder if it goes back to Carlos's old, earlier comment about school in Portugal and how you played this piece, and then you played this piece, and then you played this piece, and you're playing all these old pieces, but at a certain point, like, when's somebody going to like start passing on other great works like McCormick's piece? Like, how do you translate McCormick's bass clarinet piece? Because that score is, if I'm thinking of the right piece, I've seen at least excerpts of it, and it's really nice. But you know, you got to figure out how to play it. It's not necessarily all there, and there's a lot of investment. You know, there's a lot of investment into learning that notation, and then sort of not just that notation, but learning that world. Then you have to sort of inhabit that space for a very long time to get into it or something. So it's a question. It's a question with more questions for sure, Carlos.
For sure.
Which is a good question, I think.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And it is an interesting thing to say that to kind of navigate that relationship of when do you let go of a creation that you've done, whether it's collaborative or not. Like if I'm writing a piece of music, or if I'm writing like anything that has the possibility of somebody else taking control, then how much do I want to like really make sure that my vision and what I'm intending for the piece is still captured, versus giving respect to them as an artist, as a performer, or as a group to navigate that in their own way and inject what they want to put into the piece in their own kind of way, which to me, I'm very much a collaborator in that kind of sense. Like I kind of give up, if I haven't put it in clearly into the score what my part of the vision is, then that to me is left to interpretation for the performer to do what they want with it, because that's otherwise I've dropped my responsibility for what is important to me. But I want to make sure that I also leave it open enough that it's important to them as well, and that they have the ability to express what they want to express with a piece of music, with that piece of music when they choose to do it as well. And I think that's a very important thing.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, awesome. I don't think there's any other questions. Let me do a quick scan here. Yeah, I think we're good. So I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to say, either Carlos or Max, before we close this out. I know Carlos, I think that you wanted to give out some personal shout outs and thanks as well.
I just wanted to thank you and nienteForte for having me, Max, Carli, Mick, and Ângela for writing the pieces, and for everyone that stayed and listened. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. If there are people that are still here on that chat, give some love to all of our composers and to Carlos for this concert this evening. It was definitely a wonderful experience, and continuing through some great stuff that we've done already with this virtual season during this time of COVID, and trying to get through a pretty bleak year in some ways. Carlos, I'm supposed to ask this to you, like, is there a way for people to find out more about you and about your work, and all that right now? Like, what's your whole marketing deal at the moment?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram. my Twitter handle is Badwolf from Doctor Who,
Mm-hmm.
and my Instagram handle is Carlos X Cordeiro. My website is carloscordero.info, so you can always get me there. If you have any questions, or if you have, I sometimes get emails from composers that just want me to look at their pieces, and if I have time, I sometimes do a little recordings and stuff. So or if you just want to chat about my ramblings about ethics and performance, just get in touch. I can ramble for sure.
Awesome.
We've had. I've been fortunate to listen to some of those ramblings.
Me now too, and it's definitely something like we could.
Some of them.
I mean, it's nice because believe me, it's always in my head. It was always in my head while writing this piece.
Yeah, we could create a whole.
I think I might be breaking some boundaries.
This is something. This sounds like a podcast series that we should be doing here. Like we could do like a whole long thing about this if we really wanted to, and just kind of get into it. But we're not going to do that right now.
One thing I wanted to say.
Sure.
before it's, I wanted to thank Carlos for the amazing work he did with all the videography.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The attention to detail and the sensitivity to each piece and how each piece could be, given to the audiences. It was extremely impactful. It was extremely thoughtful.
Absolutely.
And it added a level of, it just added a level that, that one of the things that's like the perks of all of this virtual pandemicness is like the inventiveness that we come up with for ways of translating ideas, and that like you took that, and I know the fact that you had the ability was great. So it's like, I don't want it to sound like other people have to do that. You know how to do things, and like the fact that you could take the time and cultivate that sort of visual space to go with each piece was very meaningful to me, and I think meaningful to all the composers.
Thank you.
I also
Absolutely.
wanted to thank Mick. I said Mike earlier. I'm sorry. I never Mick before, and it's a great hot mic moment. No pun intended. But that was a great piece. Ângela, that was a great piece. Carli, that was great work and really great playing. Thank you for curating the program, Carlos. That's one of the nice things that we try to do here is make sure that the players have the agency to create the program, and like we put, we often give input, but I think we've given less input this season just because of the sheer nature of working virtually. It's been very eye-opening for me, for sure, to get to hear works I wouldn't normally have expected to hear. And also the final thing, as I'm not rambling, I'm trying to be succinct, but let's make sure that we get contact info, or not contact info, but connection info for some of the composers. Like I'd be really interested to hear more of Mick's music and Ângela's music, and maybe we could like shoot that out consent to with some of the like videos when we put them up later on or something.
Sure. Usually when I put out the videos, the performance videos for later, I make sure to include like their website and things of that sort of nature. So you can always check out the descriptions. That's a good segue to say that the individual performance videos are going to get released on nienteForte's YouTube channel sporadically over the next couple of weeks. So look for those and enjoy those concerts. If you go back, like I've released all of the performance videos for the concerts that we did also with Roberta and with Megan, who did some excellent concerts with us earlier this season as well. You can always, if you're interested in any of the pieces, like the descriptions of, the contact for the websites for those composers are all in those video descriptions as well. And it's all the music that I've seen and heard so far through this concert season has really been outstanding work. So it's definitely worth the time to kind of go through and check that stuff out. And I think that's about it. I guess I will say we do have one more event that's going to be happening to finalize our virtual season. The exact specifics of that are still a little bit up in the air right now, but just be on the lookout for all of our social media. If you don't follow us already on YouTube, on our Facebook, on our Instagram, and on our Twitter, then please subscribe to us, share the love, and thanks again to everybody who has interacted with us and chatted with us and supported us through all this time. It's been a genuine pleasure to put on these events. It's been a lot of work for me, but it's been work definitely well worth it to try to put on these events and to do something that we feel. I know that Max and I in particular have talked a lot about kind of trying to capture what's great about the music that we're trying to convey, the best way to try to get the quality that we want out of it. And I think that what we've come to with this and the format of this is something that I know that I've gotten a lot of good feedback about it, and it's resonated with a lot of people. So I'm looking forward to our final event and also seeing how we can potentially try to do something similar to this, even when we're able to come back and do live performances as well. Until then, thanks again to everybody. Feel free to reach out, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Yep.